All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this special Election Day Horticulture Corner program on mushrooms with our special guest, Tim Armstrong of Eat Your Yard Jax. We're so happy to have him here. We're happy to have our live audience here with us, along with our Zoom audience. So thank you all for being here. My name is Denise Reagan. I am the Executive Director of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. And I'm here with my colleague and tech genius, Davian Lamar Robinson, man of many talents. And he's our operations manager here. And we're very happy to be your hosts. We cannot do programs like this without the support of the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund, which has given us a grant to do programs just like this one. And we're really excited to have their support, and we couldn't do it without their help. The Horticulture Corner series, which is the first Tuesday of every month, is chaired by Brenda Daly, who is out there in Zoom land. Brenda, thank you for making these kinds of programs happen. And this one came to us with the help of one of our Horticulture Corner program members, Joshua Rosenberg, who contacted Tim. So we're very happy to have him on board. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce you to this really fantastic opportunity we have. The Jessie Ball DuPont Fund will match up to $500 per transaction for a total of $25,000 now through the end of the year. So if you join, renew, or donate now, you can double your support. So a $30 membership means that we get $60, which is really amazing. And so you'll be using your superpowers for good. And you can give memberships to your family or friends, and that's a gift that gives all year long. So we have a link that we need you to go to if you're willing and able. GardenClubJax.org/grow is the place to do it, and your support means the world to us. So thank you for taking part. Even if you just want to do a very small donation, no donation is too small. So thank you for that. All right, it's time to get to the main attraction, which is Tim Armstrong. Tim Armstrong's family has lived in North Florida since Florida became a state. They operated a trading post, post office, and steamboat shop on the Apalachicola River for almost 100 years. Armstrong grew up on Jacksonville's west side and worked in several nurseries as a young man. He returned to the nursery business in 2007 after he met the folks at Beach's Green Market. He expanded the edible component of his business. He enjoyed sharing the market experience with his children and hearing stories of urban agriculture success and failure from customers. After volunteering at the North Florida School of Special Education's Gardens, Armstrong studied at Growing Power in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with Will Allen. The training helped Very Good Farms to grow out of the organization's small garden into the microbusiness training model it is today. Eat Your Yard Jax is a family-run farm specializing in edible landscape and garden plants and practicing organic principles in sustainable agriculture. You're going to hear a lot more about it from Tim himself, but we wanted to let you know that if you have questions along the way, we want you to put them in the chat. But before we get started, we thought a poll would be a good way to gauge everybody's knowledge of mushrooms. So I'm going to launch that right now, and those of you on Zoom can vote, and those of you in the room can kind of share your vote by hands. So the first option, I know nothing, but I'm ready to learn. I've read a little bit, but I haven't tried it yet. I've grown some, but not very successfully. I grow them, but I can still learn a thing or two. And then if you have another answer, you can put that in the chat. All right, so let's see how people voted. So I'm going to end the poll. We have almost complete. Yeah, so I'm going to end that and we'll see what the results look like. So about 29% have read a little but haven't tried it yet. And about 71%, the vast majority, I know nothing, but I am ready to learn. So we have a lot of novice folks here. Well, that's a really good thing because the next poll I'm going to share will be right up your alley. So what are your favorite mushroom varieties to eat? And I'm going to ask everybody on Zoom to put your answers in the chat. And if you're here with us in person, you can just call out your answers. What do we have? Portobellos, shiitakes. What was that? Maitake. Whitecaps, buttercaps, crimini. All right, so lots of good examples here. Let's see. Jeffrey Stanley says, all the ones I've tried. And Jean says portobello and oyster. And Pat Wagger is on portobello team. Yes, I am too. And I have a wine cap one and white caps and portobello. So yeah, portobello is definitely getting the lion's share of the responses here. All right, those are great. Thank you so much. Portobello and white mud. All right, so without much ado, I'm going to ask you to put your questions along the way in the chat. We'll refer to this and serve them up to Tim along the way. And with that, I hand it over to Tim. Take it away.
Thanks very much for having me here today. I recognize some faces in here. The introduction was very kind and I appreciate that. I would like to expand just briefly on that before we delve into our talk. Just a little bit about me and my business. I have a 40-acre farm about 15 minutes west of here that we operate our Eat Your Yard Jax business at. We're a licensed aquaponics facility, so we grow fish, we grow plants, we grow mushrooms. Our main focus and the cusp of our business is edible plants. So the whole mission statement of our business is to empower locals to eat local 1 yard at a time. And so I love my flowers and my ornamental plants, but I can almost substitute a beautiful edible plant for everyone. And in my front yard, there's a 30-foot tall moringa tree. There's a puntia cactus that people use to make medicine out of. There's pomegranates, there's avocados, and yours could be too. And so that's what we encourage folks to do with our business. I have been in this business since 2007, and simultaneously, I helped start Very Good Farms for North Florida School of Special Education. If you haven't been there, you should go and tour their campus. It's a whole edible campus at a special needs school. I have 3 boys of my own, and that was one of my impetus to start the farm. I wanted them to see what hard work was all about. I wanted to give them a place to muck around, make a few bucks if they needed to. And it's been a good experience. My boys now are 20, 17, or 20, 18, and 14. So they're just about grown and out of the house, at least very soon. And so I'm kind of looking for the next phase of my life and for the business. And so I've decided to turn Eat Your Yard Jax into a nonprofit and kind of give it back to the community. And so we're in the process of that right now. And so if anybody wants to become involved with that, you're welcome to come and help out at the farm. We're pretty excited about that. I've got several special needs individuals that are working for me at the farm, and I also network with the Veterans Farm of Jacksonville and some other organizations, and we try to help people that have a tough time finding a place to work, a good, comfortable place where they can be productive. So that's a little bit about the business. The first slide you see there is the entrance to my farm. Can you back up one? Yeah, that's okay. Is the entrance to my farm. So it's at Moncrief Road and Utsi Road behind UPS off of Pritchard Road on the west side. We're open every Friday and Saturday to the public, so coming out and see us. We're open 10 to 4 every Friday and Saturday, and we open by special appointments. And we also do other gardens. So I've got a couple of interesting projects going on right now. I'm doing a biblical garden for a church in Mandarin, and the Church of Messiah is wanting to do a wonderful teaching biblical garden. So that's kind of a fun project. I just left Very Good Farms over at North Florida School, and they have asked me to do a self-healing garden for horses. So we have cultivated horses for a long time, right? But before that, they somehow got along. They knew the plants to eat when they were sick, and along those premises, we've created a little garden for the horses that you can turn them loose in about 15 to 30 minutes a day, or even a couple of times a week. And if they feel the need for some specific herb to help some ailment they may be suffering from, they'll go and eat that herb and self-medicate themselves. And so that's an exciting project. I do other things. We'll often have classes at the farm and social events at the farm that are free. One of our latest ones last month was an acorn presentation by Mark Salter, who owned Indochine, and he came and did a free presentation on how to process acorns, how to shell them, what acorns to look for. Acorn flour was a very important thing to the Indians in this area, and so that was kind of an interesting little thing. When folks come to the farm, we do, as part of our business model, school groups and homeschool groups and garden club groups. We'd love to host you guys out there at the farm for a group. But when we're doing tours of the farm, we not only try to sell plants, which is the main thing to stay in business, but we encourage folks to just look under their feet at the plants that are growing. So mushrooms, which we're going to talk about in just one second, but also things like, I just picked this Biden's alba out in the yard. Now this is cold and flu season, right? Well, what's blooming right now and what is saying, see me right now is a cold, potential cold and flu remedy. So look up some of the medicinal qualities of Biden's alba. Everybody curses it, call it beggarweed and everything else, but potentially it's a good medicinal as well. So when I was young, I was in the Boy Scouts. I hunted in the North Florida area and trumped through the woods and camped and stuff. And I was real interested in what was below our feet. You know, what did the Indians eat and what did the people before us eat? And so that love has drawn me to where I'm at today with this business. And so that's kind of a little bit about that. So you guys are here to learn about mushrooms, and everybody's interested in mushrooms, right? Everybody's wanting to let us know what their favorite mushroom is. But mushrooms are also a little scary. I mean, everybody's heard some story about, you know, somebody somewhere getting poisoned by mushrooms. And in Florida, we have several mushrooms that are very much gastro upsetting mushrooms. But from my understanding with mushroom experts, and I am by no means a mycologist and a certified expert. I haven't spent my life studying mushrooms like my friend Paul Stamas, but I know more than the average bear. And I am in the understanding that the only deadly mushroom in Florida is the death angel. So, so that is one of the mushrooms. I had John Martin, who is a young man who teaches mushrooms out of Gainesville, come to my farm and do a little class about a year or two ago. And we did a wild foraging walk in the woods. And This picture is a little blurry, but this is some of the wide variety of mushrooms that we gathered in the North Florida area in our little walk through the woods. So this is one of my absolute favorites. You guys were talking about favorite mushrooms and which ones to eat. This is lion's mane mushrooms, and this is a wild mushroom that grows in our area. It does bloom this time of year. It looks like an old man's beard. It's in the Hericium family. It's a small family of mushrooms. All the mushrooms in that family are edible. So it's a fairly easy to identify mushroom, and a mushroom where we can't get into a lot of trouble if we was to harvest it. It's often akin in taste and texture to lobster. And so I'll saute it in a little garlic and olive oil and butter and serve it as a side. This is another wild mushroom that we have a lot in our area. And again, this is a wild bloom. This is not one that I cultivated, but this is the Florida oyster mushroom. And so the Florida oyster also has some promise for being a bioremediation mushroom. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go into the talk. But the Florida oyster is a pretty easy mushroom to identify as well. This is some oyster mushrooms that I harvested and found in Virginia. And so this is certainly not our Florida oyster mushroom, but a beautiful bloom on an old oak log in the forest in Virginia. So this is chicken of the woods. You were mentioning hen of the woods, right? Earlier, Brenda? Isn't that shiitake? Yeah. This is chicken of the woods. Chicken of the woods is often said to have a texture of eating chicken, and that's where hence its name. And this particular one was seen recently in Asheville, North Carolina, at my friend Ryan and Mary's farm. And this is a closer up of the chicken of the woods mushroom. This is turkey tail mushroom. This is one that you'll see in our area a lot, turkey tail. So turkey tail is not an edible mushroom, but it is a medicinal mushroom, and it grows in clusters. And if you look at the way the circles are in the end of the mushroom, it looks a little bit like a colorful turkey tail. And this, again, is an inedible mushroom, but it's something that people make tinctures out of. Here's some of the medicinal qualities of the turkey tail mushroom. Immune boosting, anti-cancer, probiotics, so pretty good thing. So this is one that you guys may have seen in your yard before. Very common mushroom. It is an edible, but it's not a choice edible, and it's considered edible with caution. This is a cluster of our honey acris mushroom. This is a close-up of the honey acris mushroom. This is a little bit past prime, at least for what I use it for. So it's also called the ringless honey mushroom. And if you look, so there's 3 pictures there. If you look in the bottom left, that is about the size that I would commonly use this mushroom. And my favorite thing to do with the honey mushroom is make pickled mushrooms. That sounds a little weird, I know, but it's kind of a Russian thing. It makes a good little garnish. You're not eating too many of the mushrooms with it. So a good book, if you were gonna get into identifying Florida mushrooms, is James Kimbrough's book. So I have used this book a lot in searching out mushrooms in the North Florida area. It's good color pictures. It's not a book about edible mushrooms, but it does identify as to whether it's edible or inedible in the book. So it's a good reference book for you. Some other resources for you for mushrooms is Taylor Lockwood's series. This is the identification trilogy, but he has one called The Good, the Bad, and the Deadly. That's pretty good. And I have a copy of that one. If you guys ever want to do a mushroom movie night at the farm, I have a projection screen, and so we could do a little mushroom movie night. There's Keith has also got a Let's Grow Mushroom series. If you're interested in learning how to grow spore and getting into mushrooms a little more in depth, this would be a good book for you. So this is some wild oyster mushrooms. So if you were taking a walk through the woods, and a good place maybe to do this would be the Arboretum, the Jacksonville Arboretum. This is at my farm, but this is what you would be looking for. You'd be looking for the little clusters of oyster mushrooms, and this is at a good age for me to really enjoy them. With the oyster mushrooms and with the shiitakes, you were talking about shiitakes, and shiitakes probably my favorite. It definitely used to be my all-time favorite. You know, it's the one I eat the most of because I'll tell you why later. But with the shiitakes and with the oysters and most mushrooms, when the cap is still rolled over on the edge is the optimum time to eat the mushroom. So as the mushroom gets a little older and the cap falls out, that's when it'll drop its spores. And it's not that it's not edible at that point, it's just not as choice. These would be very, very delectable. This is not the same bloom, but this is another bloom of the Florida oyster mushroom. Very common mushroom. It's actually, Florida is in the name of the mushroom. It's Floridus something, but this is a very common and very easy to find mushroom. I found quite a few of these up at Fort Clinch in Fernandina, walking through the woods. This is reishi mushroom. Have you guys seen this in your, so this is not an edible mushroom, but this is a Florida medicinal mushroom. So reishis are used a lot in tinctures. The reishi has a kind of a shellacky looking stem to it. It's so there's two in this picture. There's one that's just coming up and you see it, and then there's an older one, a little past prime on the stem here. So you were talking about shelf bracken earlier. So he's hard and corky like a shelf bracken, but he has a stem. So that's one way you can tell the difference. And when it's young and it's coming out and it's shellacky like that, that's a good way to tell it. So reishis are a mushroom that you can find in the North Florida area. And this is a little better picture of the reishi mushroom. So this is when I'm teaching my classes on mushrooms. So this is a book that I'll often mention. Trad Cotter is the owner of Mushroom Mountain in North Carolina, and he's one of the individuals I took training on in mushrooms. So how did I get into growing mushrooms? When I bought my farm to move my nursery to, it was just a wooded piece of property. So 40 acres, no way in there, no road, no infrastructure, no nothing. So I had to make room to put my greenhouses, and in clearing off all the trees, I felt guilty, about cutting down all these trees, and I was selling firewood and doing whatever I could, to reutilize the trees. And then I found out you could grow mushrooms on oak wood. And I thought, there's a match made in heaven. I've got plenty of wood and you can grow mushrooms on it. So I ordered some spores and inoculated some logs of shiitake and got busy with the infrastructure of the farm. By the time I looked at them 6 months later, I looked over there and they were all dried up and cracked. And I thought, what a waste of time that was. And so I threw them out in the pasture and kind of forgot about them. And then, lo and behold, one rainy day, I'm walking out to feed the chickens, and I glance over in the pasture, and there's my shiitake logs just loaded with mushrooms. And I'm going, there you go. The more you neglect them, the happier they get. Maybe I am a mushroom guy. So I haven't given up. And it was mentioned earlier that I took commercial urban agriculture training at Will Allen's Growing Power in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He has a 6-month program where he does commercial urban agriculture, and his program is pretty unique in a couple of things. One is you can't just say, oh, I want to take your program. You have to go up there with a project. So you have all these folks with projects from all over the world coming in there, and they're working on their projects while they're going through the program. So you get to hear about, some girl in New York City who's gonna, take over this abandoned warehouse and start up a fish farm, and this gal in Mississippi that's starting a collard green festival for the neighborhood and teaching folks how to utilize an easy to grow vegetable that, grandma grew with old fatback floating around in it, but she's teaching you how to make collard wraps and, things like that. So that was a very important element of the program. But also it was divided into modules. And so the modules are like soil and animal husbandry and beekeeping and mushroom production was one of them. And so I took mushroom training with Will Allen, and I learned how to grow oysters and shiitakes and some other mushrooms as well. But I also went up to Trads a few years after that and took some training with Trad and Olga, Trad and Olga, his wife. They're very kind to me. They have a mushroom production facility. So there's not too many mushroom labs that sell spores east of the Mississippi. Most of the spores that I order actually come from the Pacific Northwest, where mushrooms are a lot bigger and spore houses are much bigger. But Trad and Olga have a good operation that might be a little more regional, and so they're a great place to order spores from. And he wrote this book, and he does work with the local college on microremediation. So microremediation is basically using fungi to help alleviate some of the ills of our society, some pollution effects. So there's some work with microremediation for petrochemicals, for agricultural chemicals, and there's also some not remediation, but micro work being done with fire ants. There's a fungi that will get under the carapace of fire ants and grow a mushroom out of their head. So, now there's poetic justice, right? So there's some very interesting and unique things that are going on in the world of fungi. So fungi is an interesting thing. We're kind of going back a little bit, but fungi, depending on who you talk to, but fungi is actually in its own kingdom. It's not a plant or an animal. And it is considered one of the largest entities in the world. There's a mushroom, there is a mycelium mat in the Pacific Northwest that actually goes through 2 states, and it's all interconnected. And mushrooms are very important for plants. People are realizing that more and more. So when you get premium potting soil now, you'll see it with mycofactors in the potting soil. So a lot of your more expensive mixes now have come to recognize that without the fungi, plants cannot uptake a lot of the minerals that are in fertilizers. And so there's a relationship between the fungi and the hairs, the root hairs of the plant that help it uptake a lot of nutrients. And so this is a breakthrough that has really helped in the organic gardening world. And so one of the ways that I encourage folks to do that when I'm teaching my organic gardening classes and when I teach my classes at University of North Florida is to just go out in the woods around where you live or your yard and rake some leaves that have been there a while up, and you'll see the little mat of fungi in those leaves. Those contain the micro elements that are important for your area. And so if you use those as an addition to your compost, you're basically adding the things that are in those bags of dirt and fertilizer to your composting operation, and those are regional. And so you know those are ones that are going to help your plants to be most successful. So this is, I don't know, yeah, you guys can read that. So this is a little bit that talks about why mushrooms are important for us physically. Not only are they wonderful and easy and to eat, but they're also great shiitakes for T-cell, stimulate natural T-cells, so it would help with cancer. Reishi also has some of that qualities to it. Turkey tail has a long history of being a medicinal mushroom. And portobello is also a good anti-cancer. So you can see from this that mushrooms have a lot of factors to them that are very good for us. This is my friend Val at my farm, and she's showing an example of some of the great mushrooms that we grow around our farm. So on the bottom left-hand side of this corner is a reishi mushroom that we've inoculated a log and grown some reishis. In her, I guess it's her left hand, but on the right-hand side in her hand is a baby cluster of those honey mushrooms that we talked about. And then the log right by her knee has got shiitakes. And so, and this is what we produce in our mushroom workshops. If you'll see the little metal tag on the one that's in the front, this is the classic little tag that I put on all my mushroom logs. And I've referred back to workshops a couple times. We do workshops on mushroom production at our farm. And in those workshops, we take fresh cut logs and inoculate them with whatever variety of mushrooms that we want to grow. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. This is Josh, who's not here today, the Mr. Culprit that got me to sign up for this gig. So this is actually me and him taking a walk in the woods behind my farm. So of my 40-acre farm, I only have about 3 acres cleared where my nursery operation is. So most of it's wooded, but I have a road that goes through the next 20 acres. I call it the lower 20 road. And we walk it often just to see what's going on in the world of the woods. And this is Josh, who has found a wonderful lion's mane mushroom. So lion's mane has some great health benefits as well. So this is us doing a mushroom workshop at the farm. We take, as I had said, fresh cut oak logs and drill them. So we drill the logs, we inoculate them with inoculation dowels from a reputable lab, like Trads that we talked about earlier, or one of the other labs in the area. We inoculate them, then we seal that over with wax, and we tag that as to what strain of mushroom it is. You can do that with shiitake mushrooms, which is the one we do the most of. You can do that with oyster mushrooms, and you can do that with lion's mane mushrooms and several other varieties. But this is us on the porch at my farm doing a mushroom workshop. And you can see that, that it's something that you can do with kids, you can do with all ages. So the little bag that you see on the porch here is the bag that contains the spores. This is us doing some with some little kids, and so as I said, it is something you can share with all ages, and makes it a lot of fun. This is one of the shiitake logs after it's come into full fruition. So people often ask me, well, how many mushrooms would you get off a log? And it's its own entity, and so it depends on how happy it is. It's like, how many roses am I going to get off my rose bush? You know, it depends on how happy the rose bush is, right? This log was obviously very happy, so I was very proud of this log. And I keep my logs in a little shade house. But a lot of my customers, and I have done this too, just keep them in a flower bed. So once you've inoculated your log, so if I took a fresh cut log and I inoculated it, typically say if I inoculated, I've got a workshop coming up November 28th, so the end of November. So if I inoculated a log at the end of November, I would expect my first bloom to be probably in the spring. So it's usually 3 to 6 months from the time you, up to a year, from the time you inoculate it to the time you get your first bloom. And so how many years does a potential log last? It's approximately about a year per inch diameter of the log. So I mostly deal with 4 to 6 inch logs because they're easy to handle. So if you have inoculated a 4 to 6 inch log, then you're potentially looking at about 4 to 6 years that log could last. And how many blooms would you get per year? Usually 2 to 4 blooms per year is what I see. And again, how many mushrooms per bloom, it just depends on how happy the log is. Sometimes it's only 1 or 2, sometimes it's as many as 50. You can go to the next one. So this is a baby shiitake mushroom when it first comes out. And in this particular photo, you can see where you can see the wax spot where we inoculated that particular log. It doesn't have to bloom out where you inoculated it, because once you have inoculated the log with the mycelial material, it colonizes that whole log. So it travels down the vein of the log itself, and it can pop up anywhere. It can pop up on the end of the log, or it can pop up, as this one did, where the inoculation site itself. The wax doesn't last that long. Usually will only stay on there about a year. It's I talk about it in my workshops as being akin to a Band-Aid on a boo-boo. So you're just putting the wax on there to protect that site where you inoculated the log until it's had an opportunity to start colonizing the log. So these are oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms are kind of fun. They're fast, whereas shiitake, you're gonna inoculate the log, and then anywhere between 3 months and a year, you'll get a bloom. Where oysters, if you inoculate straw with oyster mushrooms, usually within about 2 to 3 months, you're gonna get a bloom. Sometimes even a little faster. I've seen them bloom as fast as like a month or two. And these look like gray dove mushroom. And this is a bag that I've inoculated of wheat straw. And wheat straw, unlike hay, which would rot and not be a good media for mushrooms, wheat straw is hollow in the inside, so it's little straws, as the name implies, and that allows the mycelium to colonize it easier and travel easier up and down the straw. So we sterilize the wheat straw and put it in a dark place, and that allows it time to colonize that wheat straw. And then once it's fully colonized, then we set it into a more light, and that stimulates a bloom. And so oyster mushrooms are a fun one to grow that way. This is me in my kitchen with 2 big bags of mushrooms and some wild hair. So this one on my right is a little bit past prime, but I'd still eat those mushrooms. I'm sure I ate them that night. So oyster mushrooms are unique in that it's a fairly large family of mushrooms. And so being a large family, you have a good variety of mushrooms. This is a pink mushroom, pink oyster. And pink oysters and yellow oysters are warmer weather oysters. So you can choose different varieties to grow at different times of year with the oyster mushrooms. And this is obviously one of the summer blooms that we had on some of our pink tropical mushrooms. This is King Stropharia mushroom, often called the wine cap mushroom, and because of the beautiful wine-colored caps. Wine cap mushrooms grow on a chip bed. So unlike the techniques we've talked about with the logs and with the straw, this grows on a bed of wood chips. So you'll take clean, relatively fresh, but slightly aged, like between 1 and 3 months wood chips, and you would make a layer of wood chips in an area. Now you can do this in a laundry basket. You can just do it out in your yard somewhere. I've done it under a ginger patch in my farm. So I've laid down the cardboard, layer of wood chips, the mycelium, cardboard, wood chips, mycelium, cardboard, wood chips, mycelium, and made a lasagna little arrangement about a foot deep with the wood chips, and that'll last several years. And so after 2 or 3 years, you put some more spores and some fresh wood chips on it and I usually get a couple of blooms a year off the wine cap mushrooms. And I like them. I have had some friends that tell me that they're not as flavorful, and they're not quite as good as like a shiitake. But they're still a good, to me, they're still a good mushroom to eat. And another fun, easy one to grow. This is our lion's mane that we talked about. We didn't, so you see the kind of beard on this. And so in that first paragraph, it talks about memory and cognitive and Alzheimer's related declines. And so Eating more lion's mane may be good for all of us, right? This is me with some lion's mane. So the lion's mane that we've seen thus far in our little slideshow pictures have been ones that we've found in the woods. So native lion's mane, but this is some cultivated ones. I wanted to point out a couple of things in this picture. One is the log behind the lion's mane I'm holding in my hand. You see this one is past prime, so it's already gotten kind of waterlogged and dirty, and I wouldn't eat that mushroom, but it probably dropped its spores on that log again, which will encourage more blooming from that particular log. If you look to the left of that log, you'll see another method that I use for mushroom production, and that's called the slab method, where you'll take your fresh cut logs. I particularly use that with bigger logs. So you'll take the logs and you'll cut them into slabs, and instead of drilling a hole in it and putting your inoculation material, you would put the inoculation material between the slabs and you'd stack it up totem style. And so you can use that method on several varieties of mushrooms, but lion's mane is a good one. I've also used that on shiitake and oyster mushrooms. So lion's mane is often thought of as looking like an old white beard or icicles hanging down, and so that's a good way to help identify lion's mane. So lion's mane is kind of unique. I think we were talking about the shelf bracken and how it grows on sick trees, and most mushrooms grow on declining trees. There's not that many mushrooms that'll grow on a good live tree. That's just something that usually it's a tree that's already in trouble and starting to die and rot, and then the mushroom helps break the tree down. But lion's mane is one of the few mushrooms that can actually develop a relationship with the healthy tree and grow on a live tree as well as a dead tree. So during one of my mushroom walks at the farm, we were walking around the farm, and it was kind of a dry period when we had scheduled this walk. And so we were discouraged because we hadn't really found that many mushrooms on our walk. But we were coming back on the compound, and I happened to walk by this tree with a big hole in it, big knot hole in it that a squirrel or something lived in. And I just caught a flash of white in the corner of my eye, and I looked in that knot hole. There's a lion's mane mushroom growing inside the tree in the knot hole in there. And so I was wondering if maybe a squirrel was gardening that one or something. I don't know, you know. But you just never know where you're going to find a mushroom in the wild. So I had mentioned that you could grow oyster mushrooms in a variety of methods. The method that I commonly use is a plastic bag with sterilized wheat straw in it, but you could also grow it in a bucket like this. I've grown them in jars, and a lot of the commercial, especially in Japan, a lot of the commercial operations are growing them in jars, sterilized jars. I've done them in laundry baskets, particularly the smaller laundry basket. You can sterilize the straw, put it in it, and it grows out the holes in the laundry basket. It looks really cool. And in Paul Stamos's book, and I'm sure I couldn't find it as fast enough, but anyway, there's a cute picture of a big fluffy armchair that somebody has inoculated the whole armchair with oyster mushrooms, and I showed that to my wife. She's like, "No way! Don't you even think about it." But if you're really interested in growing mushrooms and delving into this further, I would highly recommend Paul Stamos's books. He also has a YouTube channel or some YouTube videos. I don't know that he has a channel, but he also has some great YouTube videos. Paul Stamos has devoted his whole career to mycology, and he is certainly one of the premier mycologists of our era. not only has he written this book, but he's written a book called Mycelium Running that talks all about how mycological entities can help save the world of a lot of the ills. He has this edition and one more that's a textbook on growing spores. So if you're particularly interested in growing your own spores, the entity that you would multiply the mushroom with, then he would be a great resource. He talks a lot about safety. Paul, when I've heard him speak, says that all mushrooms should be cooked. And so I kind of follow that suit. I know the little button mushrooms you eat in the store, you can eat raw, and I have, you know. But as a general rule, all the mushrooms that I grow and harvest in the woods, I cook. So I usually cook them, you know, well. So that's interesting little thing. So I alluded to YouTube, and there's some great things on, you know, YouTube, but I did want to mention that Eat Your Yard Jax does have a YouTube channel. We've got an Instagram page and a Facebook page, so if you are so inclined to follow us a little bit. So this is me at the farm taking folks on a tour, and so hopefully you can come out and take a tour sometime. This particular group was a group from a brain injury organization, but we take school groups and garden clubs, like I said. This is Mark, not on this last acorn expedition that he came and taught, but this was an earlier one where he did an acorn demonstration for a 4-H group that I was hosting that day. And this is, like I said, the name of what our organization is all about is empowering locals to eat local, 1 yard at a time. So I'll leave a few minutes at the end. I think I burnt my time up well. Hopefully haven't bored you guys to sleep, but I'll leave a few minutes for questions in case.
Well, thank you, Tim. Make sure I've got my headphones on here again. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can get your questions and see you up close and personal. So
I have a question.
We'll do some from the chat first, and then we'll open it up to the audience here. Let's see. Get rid of participants so I can see the chats. There we go. All right, we had a lot of questions. So I'll go back to some of the early ones. So one is, what days are you or someone out there for someone to come and help on the farm?
Fridays and Saturdays when we have the farm open are the best days. The best day actually to volunteer is Friday. But I'm welcome to have folks either day, Friday or Saturday, to come and work with the guys or to come work with us. This Thursday, I'm hosting a regular volunteer who comes to my farm with her son. She's from Mexico, and she's going to take some of my unusual plants and do a little video series for us. So this will be nice. She's going to cook with Hoya Santo and chaya, the tree spinach, a Mayan superfood. And so she has several recipes lined up for us, and so you'll be able to see those episodes soon on my YouTube channel.
Great. All right, we had a lot of questions about the books, and so what I'll do is I'll take pictures of all the books and do a list that we send out with email.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
On the blog as well, because there's a lot of great resources there. We have a question from Alan Robinson. Where do you source your wheat straw?
Yeah, I wish I had a better source for good clean wheat straw. Some of the better feed stores are where I source my wheat straw. Last ditch, go to Tractor Supply, and they have it back in the bedding area.
Okay, good to know. Let's see. I don't see any other questions on the chat right now, so I think we'll open it up to the audience here. And
Linda?
Is there a best, we've done this before, but I'm wondering if there's a best time of the year to start your mushroom.
okay,
Start your mushroom.
so if you could repeat the questions from the
Yes,
audience.
so Brenda was wanting to know if there's a best time of year to start mushrooms here in North Florida. It would depend on what type of mushroom you were growing, but since most of my mushrooms are grown on hardwood, the best time of year would be when the sap starts going down in the trees. So you'll almost never see me doing a mushroom workshop in the summer. So it's about this time of year that I start the classes, and then I run them through the winter, and then come spring, it's done. Now, would I inoculate some logs if I found them on the side of the road that some tree guide cut up for me in ideal size? I probably would if I had some spore in the fridge. They just wouldn't last as long. So it's the sugars that are normally up in that canopy that the mycelium is eating. So the sugars in that log, and when the tree starts to go into dormancies, those sugars get stored in the core of the tree, and so that's the ideal time. Now with oyster mushrooms, since we're growing them on straw, it's not as critical, and you actually could do it all year long.
He can repeat it too. Yeah.
So I have two questions actually. One of them is talking about the slab cultivation, where you take the two logs, you can slap them together and put the mushrooms, the spores in between. Is it possible to put the mushrooms in between the slabs as they produce spores?
This is a question about the slab method.
So he's talking about the slab method and wants to know if you can use like fresh mushrooms, like shiitakes that you had got at the market or whatever, in between the slabs. It's not the recommended method. Could it potentially work? Potentially it could work, but you would be much more prone to fouling, which would be other entities getting involved. So the whole deal behind getting spores from a lab is that they set up clean rooms and go to a lot of expense and trouble to get you good, clean spore to start your production with. And I personally, that's all I use. I know you can grow some spores too of certain species of mushrooms on damp cardboard, and I have tried to do some spore multiplication through those methods. And so if I was going to try with a fresh mushroom, I probably would get it to drop its spores on something like damp cardboard, get that going first, get that mycelium mat going first, and then put it in the second part of that question.
Okay, so my second question was, how often does the mushroom produce spores throughout the year? I mean, is it different with species or?
So for lack of a better word, the mushroom itself is basically just a procreation device, you know, or sexual appendage or whatever you want to call it, of the entity. The entity is the mycelium who never shows its face. So when it sends that procreation device up, it's going to procreate. It's going to send those spores out then pretty soon. You know, it's a short-lived operation. Did that answer that question? Okay.
is, are you familiar with the product that's totally home that says grow your own oyster mushrooms? If you are, what's your opinion?
Yeah, and we have a question online that asks about the exact same thing. So mushroom kits, and are they any good?
So am I familiar with mushroom kits and are they any good? Yeah, yes, I'm very familiar with mushroom kits. And potentially they could produce for you. So when I teach my workshops, I try to teach folks how to create them kits themselves so that they can get more spores and they can multiply that activity. If you're just looking for something for a gift for somebody or for just a one-time little kind of thing, because you don't have any really knowledge with that kit, you know. So do I think they could work? Yes, potentially I think they could work. I mean, the theory behind what they've done to create that kit is good science. And I have some acquaintances that actually do that kind of thing. So was there another question or was that it? Okay, all right, any more?
Any other questions? Oh, we have one in the back from Tiffany.
Yeah, it is, and there's the sign-up sheet up here if anybody is so inclined, or if you just want more information and want to sign up for my e-newsletter, on the second page is a way to sign up for that. And the current workshop that I have scheduled is November 28th, and it's from 10 to 12:30, and it's a combo workshop where we do an hour on shiitakes, an hour on oysters, and then a half hour on others. So I'll teach you a little bit about how to do the bed technique and that kind of thing.
Thanks, Tiffany. That's great. All right. So do we have any?
Got one last.
Two more questions.
Yeah. Mhm. I have. It is good.
So the question is.
It's worth watching. Fantastic Fungi was the name of the movie, and yeah, it's a really good movie.
I take real hard when you say that only one of all varieties is poisonous. That is what you said, right?
That's my understanding, yeah. No, not poisonous, deadly. Deadly, there's a difference. You can get sick or you can die, but the death angel is deadly.
The one that family should be aware of, or, you know, if under my garden I see things that are growing out of the bottom of the oak trees and stuff like that, what is the one that I should be watching for and run in the other direction?
The one that I showed you the picture of, the death angel. The death angel, if you eat it, you don't make it to the hospital.
Oh, it was the one with the kind of skinny stem and
If in doubt, don't do it. Yeah, if you're you know, it's something that, you know, I cross-reference a couple of times before I go to a new type of mushrooms. I mean, there's several that I didn't mention, like boilettes and things like that. And the reason I didn't mention them is because they're a lot more murky. So in other words, like with the boilette family, which is, when I was in Europe, that's all they ate, man. Everybody talked about boilettes and stuff like that. But here, you know, it's just not that popular of a mushroom. And there's some members of the boilette family that are choice edibles, and then there's some that'll make you kind of sick. That are not choice edibles at all, but they're all in the same family, you know. So when, you know, I don't even bother to harvest those in a while, other than to bring them home and identify them, because a lot of times that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing them home, I'll take a spore print, I'll take a color print, because the color of the inside of the mushroom, what the ink looks like on the inside of a mushroom is one of the identifying factors. I would highly recommend you get Kimbrough's book if you're interested in helping to identify more of the mushrooms in your yard. That's a good reference for that.
well, I was thinking, I asked the gardener, I remember a couple of years ago when I was answering the phone, we had someone who had moved down here from Massachusetts, and they had found a mushroom that looked just like what they Massachusetts. And so I went to the Edith's website looking for whatever the university might have on mushrooms. And they had nothing that was available for consumers. And I talked to Terry Delvalier about it, and she said, we don't encourage discussion of the mushrooms because we can't take the liability of giving faulty information. And then last year, we actually did have a presentation from the fungi guy from Gainesville. But I thought it was interesting that as just somebody like me who's answering the phone and saying, oh yeah, that's a great Austin student needed here. Kind of advice they don't want to give it.
Right. It's funny you should mention that because.
I wouldn't know.
Right.
I would be glad to know that.
Yes. And we should take it upon ourselves to educate ourselves a little bit more. But yeah, we live in that little Texas society. So I actually was going to bring this up. I wrote it in my notes and I didn't bring it up. So since you opened that can of worms, I'll bring it up. About 3 years ago, I had the pleasure of being a representative for Slow Food First Coast at their international convention in Turin, Italy. So 400 different countries from all over the world had presentations, and I did my presentation on Yupon holly. But Finland had a booth, and in their booth they had brochures on come to Finland and collect wild mushrooms. And I got one of those brochures, and I thought, you would never see this in the United States. Here they're saying, come to our forests and visit Finland and collect wild mushrooms. So it just goes to show you, cultural differences,
All right. I think we're going to end that there. If we could all, both on Zoom land and in person, give Tim a big hand.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to get back to sharing my slides. And if you would like to learn more about Eat Your Yard Jax, please go to eatyouryardjax.org. And you can sign up for his tours, sign up for programs like the program. So that's November 28th, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is a really good time to go and do something like this. So I encourage all of you to go do that because you will learn a lot. And thank you so much, Tim. Just so overjoyed to have you here today and for all of you to take time out on your election day. I wanted to tell you about a couple of programs coming up. This Thursday, we have Crazy for Canning. Crazy for Canning is a really awesome program with Chef Shelly McInnes of the Sweet Spot and Urban Lounge. Many of you probably are familiar with her if you're from the Springfield area. Great. She's a canner extraordinaire. Her whole shop is filled with things that she's canned. She does not waste food. She cans it, and you'll learn a lot from her. And this program is just in time for Thanksgiving. So if you're gonna have some leftovers, maybe you should can them and not toss them. All right. The Art and History of Gourds, November 12th. We have a fabulous program. Mindy Hawkins is a local artist who makes these incredible creatures out of gourds. And her program not only talks about her work, but takes you through the history and all the cultures around the world that have used gourds in their culture. So really great program, November 12th. We have our Budding Gardeners program that's happening November 14th. That's 2 weeks from Saturday. Really great program, all about bugs. You're going to learn about bugs, beneficial insects, how to build a little bug hotel that you can take home and put in your yard to attract the good ones. And it's a great program for children in grades up to grade 6. So if you have children, grandchildren, please sign up for this program. And I believe Damien is putting some links to these in our chat on Zoom, and they're all available on our website. So go to GardenClubJax.org. Our next horticulture program is called Houseplant Parenthood, with Amanda Mahoney of Cultivate. You might be familiar with Cultivate. It's a little store on Park Street near the corner of Park and King. And they have an amazing selection of houseplants, and they will also have some plants here for sale. So that is the evening of December 1st. Our DIY program, Fun with Flowers, is always really popular, and the wreath making one is the most popular one of the year. And so you can take part on December 3rd. We're having a morning one at 10 o'clock in the morning and an evening one at 6:30 because there's so many people who love to take this program. And that's with Sandra Pfaff of Anything with Plants, and she is a wreath maker extraordinaire. We just finished having a boutique sale earlier in October, but we're going to bring it back for December, just in time. Shop, for the presents that you need, your last minute shopping. So December 18th, 19th, and 20th, and that will lead into our Luminaria night. Garden Club, last year we had our first Luminaria night party, and we're going to do it again this year with social distancing, as that we'll be doing throughout that time. But we're partnering with Go Tuckin again. Go Tuckin are the open air electric vehicles. There's 6-seaters, and they will take you on a tour of all the Luminaria out that night. And it's a really wonderful time. And there'll be so many things going on here as well. We'll have some socially distanced food and some music, holiday music. Maybe you can sing along, and it'll be a lovely night. So look for that program on the website soon. We do a survey for all of our programs, and so those of you on Zoom land, you'll be getting that link in the chat. Those of you who are here in person, we'll send it to you after this program. We really want to hear from you. We want to know how you feel about the program and what kinds of programs you want to see in the future. So please take that survey when you get it. I want to thank the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund once again for helping us with this program. And I want to say thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to all of you on Zoom. Thanks to Tim for making this program happen. And I want to thank my colleague and partner in crime, Damian Lamar Robinson, my favorite work husband. And thank you all. We had a great time. I hope you did too. And if you haven't voted yet, go out and vote today. Goodbye.